Hi, this is Chef Janie Pendleton, and today I'm going to teach you how to make chicken stock. So come on, let's get started. We're going to start by using the thigh and legs, and we're just going to rinse them here under water and lay them down inside of our large enamel roasting pan. The thighs and the legs here have plenty of bone and plenty of meat. This will give us a nice stock. Now we're going to lay these in here skin side up. Try to leave as much roasting space between them. We want nice collaring around all the way around this. Now another thing we're going to talk about here real quick is keeping your space clean. Before I start doing anything, I always bleach my sink, I always clean my countertop, and I don't let anything touch, and then I'll re-clean all this again. Okay, now I've cleaned my area and I've set out my vegetables and I'm all ready to start chopping my vegetables. Now you're asking me, how can you cross-contaminate chicken with the vegetables if you're just going to cook them together? Well, that's easy. You wash your hands, you wash the sink, and you wash the area really well before you handle the vegetables, because you might not be using them all. Some of this might go back in the refrigerator, and I don't want to feed this to my children later. You know, them take a carrot out of the refrigerator and them get sick because I also touch chicken with it. So always clean your space when you go from meat to vegetables, or vice versa, from vegetables to meat, because this can make you sick, especially when you're handling chicken. So now what we're going to start here is we're going to chop our carrots largely. We're going to chop up a red onion. We're going to chop up a whole thing of celery here, a whole stalk of celery. Here's another onion. And then I have some leeks left over from when I made my beef stock. So we're going to chop up one full leek. And we're going to add these vegetables in on top of our chicken. Okay. So what I've done here is I've just chopped up an onion, and you can use the skins, you can use everything, it doesn't matter, because you're going to strain this out with cheesecloth when we're done anyway. So put it all in here. I mean, even if you put the whole end of the celery stalk, that's fine. Just be sure and chop it up a bit. And basically any vegetable works, except you don't want to use cauliflower or broccoli because that clouds up your stock. Now what you want to do at this point is you want to make sure that your meat is sitting on top of your vegetables. You want this meat to show. Now if you're doing beef, you want to put your ribs or whatever, you want to put fat side up. If you're doing chicken, we're just going to go ahead and do chicken or skin side up. So a chicken, it's skin side up. And I'll probably put, I've got another thing of chicken, I'll probably put another one in here because I've got room for it here for another one. Okay, and next we're going to add the spices. Okay, now we've just added our spices. I've added my favorite blend of peppercorns. Here I have red for the heat, the white, the black, and the green. This is my favorite mix. You can add all black if you like. You can add all white if you like. And out of my garden here, I have some herbs that I have dried myself. So this was free. So sage, and you just want to rub that and put that in there. And here I have my thyme that I grew in my garden and dried. And I have crushed that and put that on as well. Now we're going to talk about salt next. You can add what spices you like to this. Little cumin, you know, whatever you like. But when it comes to the salt, the nice thing about making your own stocks is you can control the amount of salt that you use in your stock. Now I like salt in mine, so I went ahead and I added some salt. Okay, so salt to taste, but you don't have to add salt, or very little. So that's entirely up to you. Things about making your own, and it's gluten-free. So let's keep that in mind when we talk about making our own fresh products like stock. And I freeze this, of course, in the freezer, so, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now what we want to do is we will make sure that the chicken is on top of the vegetables, because we want the chicken and the vegetables to roast. So as much coverage across this big wide open pan as possible. And we're going to put this in a 425-degree oven until this is nice and dark brown. Remember, the darker we get the vegetables, and especially the meat, the darker and the richer golden color our broth will be. And the more bones in the meat, the more gelatin-like the stock will be. Okay? It's just a quick lesson on stock. And remember, broth is your vegetables and your meats, or just vegetables, boiled on the stove for a couple of hours. That's broth. A stock, you must roast your vegetables first, and you get that dark, rich color and flavor from roasting before you put it into the stock pot to roast. Now, consommé, that is just where you take stock, the richer, heavier broth, you know, the roasted broth, and you put in an egg to clarify it. So you actually clarify it once or twice, and that becomes a very clarified broth, or very, very clarified stock, I would say. So, so that's a little lesson on the difference between the broth, stocks, and consommes. Okay, keep this from sticking on the bottom too much. I'm going to add 1 cup of water. We're going to put this in the oven at 425 degrees until nice and darkly roasted. It'll take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. This has been on for about 1.5 hours, hour and 45 minutes. And as you can see here, the chicken is done. The vegetables are nice and roasted, but we need a darker coloring here. So we're going to put it under the broil now on medium to low broil for about 15 minutes. And that's going to get it a nice darker color on the skin. And that's what's going to give our stock its nice dark roasted colorant. Okay, now we have pulled this from the oven, and we're just going to remove these nice toasted pieces of chicken, and we're going to set them down inside of our 15-quart stock pot. Now, my stock pot has an ironclad bottom. It is fully stainless steel. You do not want to do anything in an aluminum crock pot, because that does bleed into your food, especially when you're using things like acidic foods like tomatoes and things. Now, this is a 15-quart crock pot to the top, but basically it's 14 quart because we're not going to fill it up that full. We're just going to fill it up from 1 inch from the top. So we'll start off with 14 quarts. Okay, we're just going to continue to put this down in the bottom of our stock pot. Here, come back on this a little bit. Now here, we have the vegetables, and we're just going to add this in to the stock pot as well. Okay, we're just going to add the vegetables in on top of the chicken, and now we're just going to stick the lid on this, and we'll be back to this here in just a minute. There's still several more steps to go. Now, you can add a little water to this if this is kind of stuck onto the bottom of the pan. You can add a cup of water to this like so. You can turn your double burners on. I have a bridge burner on my stove, if you can see that here. And then you can boil this up and get any of the chunks and the goodies off the bottom of your pan. Now, in this case, we didn't roast because I added that little bit of water to begin with. It had a lot of juice in the chicken, a lot of fat and a lot of juice, and that's good. So we're just going to kind of rinse this out with our cup of water. I don't think there's going to be any need to cook it off the pan as well. There we go. Okay, now we've rinsed and drained some more pieces of chicken here, and we're just going to lay these. And we're just going to lay these right here on top of our roasted vegetables and of our roasted pieces of chicken. Okay, so this pan's filled up about halfway with chicken and roasted vegetables. Now we're going to go over and we're going to chop up some more vegetables, and we're going to add that in on top. Okay, we've set our crock pot on something here so it doesn't scratch our sink all up. I just set it on a pot holder, and we set it down inside of our sink. And over here I have chopped about another 3/4 of a great big stalk of celery, and probably about 50 carrots here, and just a large chop. That's fine. This is what I had left over from the garden. And then right here, I had a great big leek, and this right here was one large leek here. So and then the other and another red onion, and just largely chopped. That's fine. It doesn't really matter the size. And just enough so that it cooks through and it pulls the flavors out. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this now on top of our raw chicken. So remember, we got half roasted chicken and roasted vegetables, and we've got half raw chicken and raw vegetables, okay? And now we're just going to fill this up with cold water, and we're going to come up to about 1 inch from the top. Use cold water when you fill this up because cold water is oxygenated. That's a big word to say, oxygenated. And hot water, not so much so. And the oxygen in water, that helps pull the flavor out of your vegetables and your meat. So just a little chemistry there for you. A little cooking chemistry. Yes, sometimes there is a science to cooking. I'll have to name that my next cookbook, won't I? The Science to Cooking. There we go. We're a little over 1 inch from the top. And that's a good 14 quarts of stock right there. And this is going to cook down. Now we're going to transfer this to the stove where we're going to add our spices. Okay, we've added our sage, our thyme, and our whole black peppercorns. We've also put in some cracked black peppercorns, red, green, and white peppercorns, because that's the combination, like I said before, that I like. And we're just going to give this a stir. Going to bring this up to a boil, like I said to do. And now we're going to simmer this for 5 to 8 hours. You can simmer it for as long as you like, but I definitely suggest you definitely go over 4 to 5 hours, okay? I simmer for us sometimes up to 12 hours. Okay, when we get a nice rolling boil like this, we're going to turn it down. And we're just going to keep it boiling like this. With the lid on, it should stay boiling just like that. And now you can see why I use a glass lid. And again, you can see our little steam vents letting the steam out. That's perfect. And we're going to stand here and watch this for just a few minutes. Make sure we keep it at a nice boil like this. All the way around. And looks like it's staying there, so we can let this boil now for the next 6 to 8 hours. Okay, this has boiled for 6 hours, and we pulled it off the burner and let it cool for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. It's still very hot to touch, so we need to be very careful with it. You can let it cool off another 2 or 3 hours before you handle it, but it's getting to be late at night, so we're going to go ahead and strain this. Now what we've done here is we've laid our large roasting pan that we know will hold the liquid into the sink, and I just have my 2 drain boards here that I use, and then I just sit my colander right on top of that, and you can see that I give it enough space here that it holds up under the weight, but it's also centered over the top of my roasting pan. Okay. Now here I've cut a piece of thin, well, this is called cheesecloth, and I use it to make my butters and my cheeses, but it is actually like a very thin handkerchief. You can see through it, but it's not like the actual cheesecloth. If you're using cheesecloth, you use about 3 or 4 layers. But I just use 1 layer of this, and it's almost like one of those flour sack towels, and that would probably work for you. Okay, this is my husband, John, and he's volunteering to come in here and pour this while I film, and I'm going to stand back here because this is still very hot. You need to pour this in very slowly. And I'll hold it very slowly. There we go. Okay, it's still very hot. We're getting a lot of steam. I'm sorry if it's hurting you. And you can see here, it's draining right down into our pot perfectly. Look at the color of that. Isn't that really pretty? Nice and golden. And we're just going to continue to pour this until we get all the fluids out. Now you can't eat the meat in here. I mean, I wouldn't. It's all the juices are pretty much gone out of it. So what you want to do, okay, is you'll have, once you get it all drained, you'll have a lot of pieces of meat like this. And when it stops draining, and when it stops draining, you want to just give this a twist. Try not to let, anything out here. And this is still maybe very hot. This is why you got to let this cool down a little bit, because it's still very hot. And there's still some really good juices inside these vegetables, inside the chicken. And what we do is we just discard what bones we find before we do this, so they don't poke out the sides. And we just keep pushing here with a spoon like this, and just do a couple twists and turns until we get the majority of that out of there without hurting ourselves on any bones. And then we discard what's in here. Okay, it's got bones and a bunch of not so good stuff on it. And then what we do is we just discard it in this box, and then we do it again. Okay, so last of that. And again, we're just going to remove any bones that we see here. Like that. Another bone. More bones. Remember, this is hot. Ha, ha. Push here. And again. Lots of bones in this last section here. You're just going to bring it back up. Try not to get any of the debris into your broth. See, I'm looking, I want to show you this. It's already forming. Look at this. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's already forming. Can you see that? It's already forming the fat in there. This is going to be really, really good broth. Now I'm going to show you how to make this virtually fat-free in just a minute. So if you get a really gelatin consistency on your stock, that's good. That means you got a lot of good marrow bones in there. And that means you got a good stock. The more gelatin-like, the better. So if that happens to you and you think, oh my God, I got to throw this away, it's not right. No, you got really good stock. Do not pitch it. And if it didn't gel up much, then that's fine too. You still got a good stock. I want to show you this golden collar on this chicken stock. Now you cannot get this out of a can. And it smells so good. Now if you have any kind of debris or anything that fell in there, just scoop it on out, get it out of there. Now we're just going to cover this in 2 or 3 layers of plastic wrap. Okay, now we've let this cool to room temperature, and we're just going to put this in the refrigerator. Make sure you got room in there before you do this. And we're going to put this in the refrigerator for 48 hours. That's 2 days. Okay, it's 48 hours later, and we're just going to take a slotted spoon, and we're just going to skim off the fat off the top of our chicken stock. And you can see underneath here, we got a nice gelatin-like consistency. That's from the bone marrow. And now, if you see this and it's all gelatin like that, you're thinking you did something wrong. You did nothing wrong. The more gelatin-like, the better. So don't toss it thinking you did something wrong. Now, if it didn't gel up, that's fine too. It's still a good stock. But the more bones and the more bone marrows that you get in your stock, the better. This is a really good chicken stock right here. Very, very nice. It smells really good. Okay, we're just going to finish skimming this off, and we're going to get all this small debris off of here as well. Try not to get any of the good stuff here. And that's what makes this virtually fat-free.
Hello, I'm John. About the fat that Janie scraped off, it makes the broth virtually fat-free, but you can take that and mix it with birdseed, and the birds will really love that. It's cheaper than buying it at the store, and you've got it here already, and you can repurpose it for the birds.
Oh, good idea.
So I'll mix the stuff, cut a little place around here, pretty good place, and that'll just keep it kind of dry for the birds. And you can repurpose your things. So.
There you go. And that was just an old pretzel container. So we've actually recycled 2 things here. We've used our fat, our tallow, and we've reused this pretzel container.
Yeah, mix a little birdseed with it. Let it. It's very cold outside right now, and the birds will love that.
Yeah, and we can watch the birds while they feed. Thank you for that tip, John. Okay. Now back to the stock. I've got, like you said, I've got all the fat off the top. I went through and I've got as much of the small stuff off as possible. And we've lined up our containers and our lids. I've just grabbed my 1 cup ladle here. And we're just going to ladle this right into our containers. And I'm going to give myself 2 cups. Most recipes call for 2 cups. So that will be perfect right there. So we'll give it 2 cups per container. And we're just going to continue to fill our containers up. Leave space here for headroom for the freezer for expansion. This ended up making 10 2.5 cup containers. And these containers I just got, I think they're Ziploc containers. So now I'm just going to label these today's date. I'm going to slip them in the freezer and I'm going to use them up. They can last in the freezer up to a year. They don't last that long in our house, but you can freeze them up to a year. This is Chef Janie Pendleton on how to make my gluten-free and almost virtually salt-free and virtually fat-free chicken stock. Enjoy.
So I went outside and I got some birdseed and I just put it in here and I'm going to mix it up and together really good. And actually,
and you're making your own suet. There you go.
Yeah.
And again, he just used the fat off the top of my that we skimmed off the top of my chicken stock, and you can do this with beef stock as well. And the birds, they just love this. See, nothing around here gets wasted.
I mean, why buy a bunch of peanut butter or anything? I mean, this is just, the fat's about 9 grams of power, you know, to the birds versus a carbohydrate, and it gives it a lot of energy.
He's getting all scientific on us. Okay, we've just cleaned out the refrigerator to make room for all that beef and chicken stock I just made in the freezer. And of course, John had just made this thing of suet here, and you can see here where he mixed the bird seed in, and we've set it out here in the cold to kind of let it solidify a bit. And he just cut the top off that container, and we're just going to sit it out here to the birds. And then I've also got some old bread here. I'm just going to tear this up, and some cookies. And look at this. I made these really cool cardinal cookies at Christmas, and I put them in the freezer, and I thawed them out for my son's birthday because he liked them. He likes gingerbread. And they got old on me, so I'm just going to, all that hard work, I'm going to pitch it. These were the coolest cookies before they changed color here.